So this video is going to be on how bones are formed. Ossification, or what I like to call osteogenesis. Genesis means the start of something, and what are we starting? Bone formation. The formation of bone is done two different ways, and we're only really talking about a fetus and a little bit of infant bone making. Two different types. There's intramembranous ossification. This is going to be things that have a lot of spongy bone in them. Flat bones will be one of them. And then endochondral ossification. And these are going to be long bones, how we make long bones. Once developed bones grow along an epiphyseal plate, and these plates allow for future growths. We'll see a couple pictures of those. And it basically transitioned from a type of cartilage, the hyaline cartilage, into full-grown bone. So the two different types we've kind of already gone through. They're both going to be in prenatal development. So the intermembranous ossification is going to form flat bones. Their fibrous connective tissue is going to be their framework, and then bone is going to be attached to that, and this is going to be in prenatal development. The endochondral ossification is going to form all the other bones of the body. So anything other than flat, femur, tibia, phalanges. These hyaline cartilage is going to be, again, the thing that are going to land as the framework for this guy. Where these guys had fibrous connective tissue as their framework, these are guys going to have hyaline cartilage as their framework. And they both happen in prenatal development. So there's 4 steps for these guys, and let's go over all of them. The fibrous connective tissue for the intermembranous ossification, it's going to be fibrous connective tissue is going to be the main thing that makes them different. So they're going to use these mesenchymal cells, which are just stem cells, that differentiate into a specific type of cell called osteoblast. An osteoblast, we know these blast cells are going to make something. These osteoblasts begin secreting bone matrices from the center of the bone, and they're making that, remember that trabecular bone starts to appear? Trabecular bone was that webby, spongy bone that we saw in the middle of these types of flat bones. Our next step is going to be the osteoblast continues to produce the bones. Osteoblast that gets trapped inside the bone, so you can see some that got trapped in here. They're actually going to become the new osteocytes. And so they just kind of get converted because they're stuck into there. They get converted into these osteocytes. And remember, the osteocytes are the ones that sort of monitor and regulate bone functionality and development. And if there's any injury, they're going to go ahead and know and to activate either osteoblasts or clasts. Step 3 is going to be the osteoid continues to be produced. Now you can start to see some of that trabecular bone, that holy bone that you could see. What's going to happen is we're going to have embryonic blood vessels start to come through there, and the mesenchyme differentiates into connective tissue to create eventually that periosteum, the surface bone layer. Remember, on the outside it's called periosteum, and inside it's called endostom. Step 4 is going to be the compact bone develops on the surface of the bone. That's that harder one, and that's going to be under the periosteum bone. The spongy bone remains within the bone, and the embryonic blood vessels become red bone marrow. So you can see here's the trabecular bone, here's going to be that flat bone, that hard matrix that we can touch, and this is the spongy layer. So the next one is going to be the type that's for long bones, the endochondral ossification. So bone development starts out with, the main difference is that we're going to use hyaline cartilage. Remember, in the past we used just fibrous connective tissue, so now we're going to use hyaline cartilage, and that's going to start to be the network for our bone formation. So we're going to have to do this in different steps, but fetal bone development begins somewhere around 8 weeks, And what will happen is we're going to start to have osteoclast bones start to replace that cartilage. And then growth continues through the teens, through these specific growth plates that we'll kind of talk about. And let's talk about how long bones develop. Oops. So our first step is going to be that mesenchyme differentiates into those chondriles, which basically are going to produce a framework for the hyaline cartilage. So basically, the big difference is we're going to have hyaline cartilage, and it's going to be the fibrous material that bones are going to grow onto. What will then happen is we're going to have the osteoblasts start to make the internal bones. So let's check that out. So this is week 9. You can see that we have that hyaline cartilage. We're going to start to make this sort of outer layer of that periosteum. It's going to make like sort of a collar, and we have this bone collar that's going to give the bones some sort of shape and structure. That's going to be step 1. Step 2 is going to be that the primary ossification arises from the diaphysis. Remember, that's the shaft that we talked about in lab. And these chondriles in the middle of the cartilage will enlarge, and the matrix is reduced to thin walls. Remember how this one doesn't really have a lot of spongy material, that trabecula? The trabecular bone is usually at the ends of the bone, and we'll see how that gets made soon. What we start to see over time is that bones will start to develop. You can see that hollowing of the inside of the bone. You can see a blood vessel has come into the bone, and that's going to deliver stem cells which differentiate into osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Remember, osteoblast is making bone, and clast is breaking bones down. So the osteoclast is helping to make this area hollow, the clast, and the blast is going to be making the bone matrix that we're seeing. So these do have to work in tandem. When I first learned about this a while ago, I was thinking, why does the osteoclast have to come into play? Because you're making bone. Why would you break bone down? But you have to hollow the inside out first, and that's where that comes into play. And then, I wanted to show you a picture of... This is about a 2-month x-ray of a fetus. And what you're seeing is all the different types of bone that you can see just at 2 months. So you can see a lot of bone has started to develop already. If we keep going, this is going to be closer to birth. You'll see that the ends of the bone are starting to develop. And you're going to start to see blood vessels will start to go there. This is going to be secondary ossification, and these are going to be at the epiphysis, and this is going to make that spongy bone marrow. Remember how this is hollow, and we said that the ends are the spongy bone, and this is where blood is made and things like that. So osteoclasts have to dissolve the spongy bone area, and then osteoblasts will start to fill this in. And then the last step is going to be that we have a bone that this is going to be a child's bone. You can see that the inside is still hollow. There's still blood vessels going in because that's how it feeds itself, and this is how we get some of that material in and out. But the spongy layers are definitely at the ends. So there still is some hyaline cartilage still left behind. See at the top there's some in the middle. This is called that growth plate, if you've ever heard of that. And this can kind of predict how much growth is still left in a bone. So if you ever went to the doctor and you were concerned as a child how tall you were going to be, what they would do is take an x-ray and look at the distance in this growth plate. And that can differentiate how much growth is still left. If the growth plate was gone, we knew that growing was going to be finished. So if we look at 2 scans, this is somebody that's still actively growing. You could still see that growth plate. And here, when somebody's completely grown, that growth plate is still gone. That is completely gone. You could maybe see like a little hint of it, but definitely no space anymore. So that hyaline cartilage is gone. And that dictates bone growth. So this gives the bone the ability to keep growing and changing shape, of course. And that's what we can sort of see. This zone of cartilage will eventually get destroyed by osteocytes, and osteoblasts will sort of fill that in. Our next video will be on bone remodeling and repair as an adult.